Bodice, culture, fashion, and craft.
Hello everyone, you're welcome to Otis Culture. In today's tutorial, I'll be showing us on how to make a kimono jacket with a bell sleeve. Before we continue, I want to say a very big thank you to all my subscribers. I really appreciate you all. And if you're yet to join the family, all you need to do is to click on the red button down below to subscribe to my channel. It is absolutely free to subscribe to my channel. And also remember to click on the notification bell and select the all options so that whenever I upload a new video, you will be notified. Without further ado, let's move right to the tutorial. I'll be using this African print for today's tutorial, and this is the lining that I'll be attaching to the bodice. My fabric is folded into two, one for the back and one for the front. The front one is half an inch wider than the back. As you can see, the front one, this is the front, this is the back. It is half an inch wider than the back. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to fold in the half an inch so as to make the edges equal. You will fold the half an inch for the front so as to make the front and the back bodies be equal at the edge. Please don't mind what I'm doing. Use your own iron to press it down. This is my starting line. At this line, I'm going to insert my shoulder measurement. My shoulder measurement is 17. 17 divided by 2 is 8.5. I'll be needing half an inch to join with the sleeve, which will give me 9 inches. This is my 9 inches. I'll be making use of neck width of 4 inches. Neck depth for the back, I'll be making use of 1 inch. Neck depth for the front, I'll be making use of 3 inches. With my French curve, I'll connect the neckline. From the neck width to the neck depth for the back, from the neck width to the neck depth for the front. From my shoulder measurement, I'm going to measure 1 inch down for my shoulder slope. I'm going to connect with a straight ruler. I'm going to connect from the 1 inch to the neck width for my shoulder slope. From this 1 inch, I'm going to measure my armhole depth. Mine is 9 inches. I'm going to also insert my shoulder measurement here, which is 9 inches, to help me determine a straight line. I'm going to draw a straight line from the shoulder slope to the armhole depth. This is my chest line. At this chest line, I'm going to insert my bust measurement. My bust measurement is 44 inches. 44 divided by 4 will give me 11 inches. I'll be needing 1 inch seam allowance. Shoulder to my waist is 17 inches. This is my waistline. At the waistline, I'm going to insert my waist measurement. My waist measurement is 40 inches. 40 inches divided by 4 will give me 10 inches. I'll be needing 1 inch seam allowance. Shoulder to my hip line is 25 inches. This is my hip line. At my hip line, I'm going to insert my hip measurement. My hip measurement is 50 inches. 50 inches divided by 4 is 12.5 inches. This is 12.5. I'll be needing 1 inch seam allowance. Shoulder to the length of my jacket is 35 inches, including seam allowance to hem the lower part. So I'm going to measure what I have on my hip measurement. I'm going to insert the same measurements at the lower part of my jacket. Next is to connect the lines together. With my straight ruler, I'm going to connect from my bust to my waist. With my hip curve, I'm going to connect from the waist to the hip. And with my straight ruler, I'm going to connect from the hip to the lower part of the jacket. The midpoint would be 4.5 inches. At this midpoint, I'm going to measure 3/4 of an inch. This is for my front armhole. Then for the back, I'm going to connect from this midpoint to the chest line. This is my back armhole, and this is the front armhole. Before I cut it out, I'm going to add half an inch seam allowance at the shoulder. Half an inch seam allowance at the shoulder. I'm adding half an inch seam allowance at the shoulder to join the front and the back bodies together. with my straight ruler, I'll connect it together. This is very important. If you don't do this, your armhole will be shortened, and when it's shortened, it will be tight around your armpit. So next is to cut it out. I'm cutting the back armhole first. And the back neckline. Shoulder slope from the 1/2 inch seam allowance. This is the back bodice. I'm going to remove the back bodice. I'm going to cut the front neckline and the front armhole. When drafting yours, make sure that the front bodice will be at the top and the lower one will be the back bodice. Don't also forget, add extra 1/2 inch to the front and fold it in. Then the front armhole. From the 1/2 inch seam allowance that are added to the front, because it's a kimono jacket, it's going to be open like mine. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to slit the front from the 1/2 inch, to split it open, making it into two. Thing I'm going to do is to cut out lining for it. So what I did is I folded the lining into two and I placed the back bodice on it. I'm cutting exactly the same as the back bodice. The difference is going to be on the length. I want the lining to be 2 inches shorter than the main fabric. So before I cut it out, I'm going to fold in my main fabric like this. I'm going to fold in 2 inches. You will cross check it. 2 inches, 2 inches. Then the next thing, I'm going to cut it out. I'm going to cut exactly the shape of the back bodice. I'm going to do the same thing on the front bodice. My lining is folded into two and I place one part of the front bodice on it. So I'm going to fold in the 2 inches. Cross check it. Two inches, 2 inches. Then I'm going to cut it out. Exactly the shape. I'm going to split the lining just like the way we split the front bodice. This is the back bodice of my jacket and this is the lining. I'm going to place, this is the positive side of the back bodice and this is the positive side of the lining. I'm going to face the lining to the back bodice. I'm going to sew on the neckline with 1/2 inch. After that, I'm going to notch and top stitch. After sewing it, I'll show us the next step to take. I've sewn the lining to the fabric with 1/2 inch. After that, I notch it. Then I flip the lining over like this and I top stitch on it round with 1/4 inch. I top stitch it round. So the next thing to do is to sew the down parts. You will draw the lining. Remember that the lining is 2 inches shorter than the fabric, so you will draw the lining to be equal with the lower parts. This is the positive side of the fabric, so you will draw the lining to be equal with the lower parts like this. Then I'm going to sew 1/2 inch straight down. I've sewn it at the lower part, as you can see, with 1/2 inch. So the next thing to do is to sew the sides together. Remember that the lining is shorter than the main fabric. So what I'm going to do, you will fold it, making sure that the lining and the sides are equal. Can you see it? The 2 inches, I've already folded it inside. So the lining and the fabric are equal by the side, as you can see. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take to my sewing machine. I'm going to sew, starting from this lower part, I'm going to sew 1/2 inch, following this shape to the armhole area. From the 1 inch seam allowance that we left on the fabric, I'm going to take 1/2 inch from the 1 inch. I'm going to use it to turn the lining. I'm going to sew half an inch following this shape to the armhole area. I'm going to repeat the same thing on this other side as well. I've sewn it with half an inch at the side, as you can see, half an inch. I follow the shape, I sew it to the armhole area. This is how the lower part looks like. So the next thing to do, I'm going to notch the edge of the lower part. Then I'm going to turn the lining to the back of the dress. From the armhole area, I'm going to turn it to the back. See the back of it. As you can see, it is very neat. See the side seam, see the back, and this is the front. Then see the lower part. So I'm going to give it a good press and move to the front bodice. So this is the positive side of the front bodice, and this is the lining. This is the positive side of the front bodice. This is the lining. I'm going to repeat the same thing that I did on the back bodice to the front bodice. Sew it. I'm going to place the lining on it and sew half an inch round the neckline. After sewing, I'm going to notch. After notching, I'll flip my lining over like this. Then I'm going to top stitch on it round. After that, I'm going to show us the next step to take. I've sewn it, as you can see. I sew half an inch round the neckline. I notch it, then I flip the lining over to the back and I top stitch on it round. So the next thing to do, I'm going to sew the down parts with the lining, making sure that the lining is equal with the fabric at the lower part. I'm going to sew half an inch straight down. After sewing, I'll show us the next step to take. I've sewn the lower part with the lining with half an inch, as you can see. So the next thing to do, I'm going to, this is the opening part of the front bodice. This is where we slit opened, and the half an inch that we added to the front bodice, I'm going to sew it. I'm going to sew the front bodice. I'm going to sew it with half an inch seam allowance. I'll take to my sewing machine. This is how it's going to be. I'm going to start from this lower part. I'm going to sew half an inch straight down. This is the opening side of the front bodice. After that, I'm going to also sew the side with half an inch. I'm going to sew the side with half an inch, following the shape straight down. Then I will turn it from the armhole area to the positive side. I've sewn it with half an inch, as you can see, and I've also sewn the sides with half an inch as well. So the next thing to do is to notch the lower parts. Then I'll turn the lining to the back. Also notch this as well. Then I'll turn it to the positive side from the armhole area. This is the side. This is the back view, and this is the front view. As you can see, it's very neat. So I'm going to repeat the same thing on the other side of the front bodice. The next thing to do is to join the front bodice to the back bodice at the shoulder. Fabric to fabric, lining to lining. As you can see, I'm going to take to my sewing machine. I'm going to sew it like this. I'm going to sew it straight down. I will do the same thing on the other side. This is the back bodice. This is the front bodice. I'm going to join them together. Lining to lining, fabric to fabric. I'll sew it with 1/2 inch seam allowance that will left on it. I'll sew 1/2 inch straight down. That's one way. If you don't want to do it that way, there are different ways to join the shoulder. You can also do it like this. This is the front bodice. I will make sure that the tip of the front bodice align together with the tip of the back bodice, like this. Then I will take the lining of the back bodice, I'll flip it over to the front bodice. Like this, and sew it down. This is for beginner. If you're not a beginner, you should understand how to sew the shoulders to have it, to give it a neat finishing. Let me show us again with this other side. This is the front bodice, this is the back bodice. I'll make sure that this edge, this neckline, aligns together with the fabric. Then I will take the back lining, I'll flip it over to the front. I'll flip it over to the front like this. Then I'm going to sew it down with 1/2 inch straight down. This is the two methods that I normally use to sew my shoulders together to give it a neat finishing. After that, I'm going to sew the sides together with 1/2 inch. Then we'll move over to cutting of our sleeves. I've attached the front to the back bodice. Our kimono jacket is taking shape gradually. What is remaining now is the sleeve. Look at the shoulder. As you can see, it is very neat. That's the essence of sewing it the way I showed you. Look at the inside. It is very neat. So let's move to cutting of the sleeves. From the shoulder to where I want my flare to be attached is somewhere here. From shoulder to my elbow is 12 inches. The circumference of it is 14 inches. This is 14 inches, as you can see. So 14 inches divided by 6.28, it is 2.2 inches. And I want it to be 2 steps. This is for the first flare. I'll fold it into 2 like this, then into 4. Then for the second one, I want the second flare to be longer in length than the first one. I have my fabric folded into 4 as well. I'm going to place it on each other. The circumference of this sleeve opening. I want the flare to start from my elbow, so you will need the circumference of it. Mine is 14 inches. 14 inches divided by 6.28 is 2.2 inches. Two point two, 2.2, 2.2, 2.2. You can also divide the circumference of your sleeve opening by 4. Whatever you get, if I'm to divide the 14 inches circumference by 4, my radius will be 3.5 inches. So the second method you can use, you will just come over to this edge, you will measure 3.5 inches. As you can see, I have exactly 3.5, then you will mark it out. If you don't want to go through the formula of 6.28, either of the two is okay. So for the length, I want the total length plus the radius to be 10 inches. So I'm going to place my tape at the edge and measure 10 inches. 10 inches. I want the second one to be 2 inches longer than the first one. So I'm going to mark 2 inches round, 2 inches, 2 inches. I cut out lining for the flag as well, and I've attached it. This is the second one. To sew lining to the flare is very easy. This is the positive side of the fabric. You will place the lining positive side facing each other. Positive side facing each other. Then you will sew 1/2 inch round the circle. After that, you will notch each round and top stitch. I've sewn it, as you can see, and I've given it a good press. So the next thing to do, is to place the smaller flare on the bigger flare. I'm going to stitch it round with 1/4 inch to hold it down. I've joined the short flare and the big flare together. As you can see, it has now become one. So the next thing to do, I'm going to take my sleeve. I'm going to attach the flare to the sleeve before attaching the sleeve to the bodice. So I'm going to place it inside. Like this. Then I'm going to pin it round. After pinning it round, then I'll sew it with 1/2 inch. After that, then I will now sew the armhole area to the bodice. Once I'm through, I will show us the final look of the jacket. This is the final outcome of today's tutorial. If you find my tutorial helpful, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe down below if you've not done so. Also remember to click on the notification bell so that whenever I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Until I come your way next, please stay safe and remain blessed. Bye.